hop on before Shabbat and just say a couple of things. Last night I did a video on essentially sharing some of the visions that I've received and where they have come into fruition and how we just need to love each other. And today I asked a friend of mine, actually one of my best friends who's Black, and I said, as a white person, what can I do? And he just said, educate yourself and listen. We need to have more understanding of why the Black Lives Matter movement is absolutely necessary. When we take into consideration the amount of people who were murdered by the police, we can't be ambivalent to their suffering. And we have to go above and beyond and out of our way to ask. If you're not sure how to help, ask one of your Black friends. What can I do to show support and solidarity? And they will likely tell you. I didn't do anything for Blackout Tuesday because friends of mine who are Black told me that it wouldn't be appreciated. Listen to what the Black community needs. They need our support, they need our solidarity, they need our prayers, and they need us to understand that what has happened to Black people in this country has been an absolute travesty. We need to support each other. And if you don't know how to support the Black community, ask your Black friends, what can I do to be a pillar of your support? How can I support you? Greg, I see that my best friend, Gregory Hall, is watching. Greg, would you like to come on camera and say some things and maybe educate us a little bit on what we can do to be helpful, what we can do to be a friend, and what we can do to be there for our Black brothers and sisters during this time so that they don't feel so alone and they don't feel like their voices aren't heard. Police brutality is real. I can never unsee what happened to George Floyd. I can never unsee. And the video going around about Candace Owen, let me tell you something. Since when was Candace Owen put in a position to judge Black people? I am not going to, the facts are, let's review the facts. The facts are that George Floyd does have a criminal history, mostly drug related. There is in his criminal history a violent crime. That doesn't take away. First of all, we have to remember the man went to prison. He served his debt to society, and it's not our job to judge this man. It's our job to recognize when Black people are being targeted and when they need our support. I am just at the point where I'm watching people just arguing and angry, and that anger has to subside. We need to stand together and we need to pray together. If there's one thing that you'll find in the Black community is these are God-fearing people. And we need to pray with them at this time. We need to hold out our hands in support. We need to be there for them on a level that we might not have ever been before. And I'm going to share with you guys some things. I'm going to tell you guys the story of when I lived in Crown Heights. I lived in the Black part of Crown Heights, the bad part. Ooh, even when I moved on to the block, people told me, You're living on St. John's Place between Schenectady and Utica. You got to be careful. That's Bloods territory. Let me tell you something about my personal experience with the Bloods. All right? Never once, not one time, was I ever harassed. Not one time was I ever made to feel different in my community. In fact, I can tell you, there was a time, it was late at night, and I had groceries and two kids in the car. And it was one of those big trips where you buy a bunch of different groceries. And I saw red bottom shoes and red bandanas and red hats coming down the street. And it was pretty clear to me that those were the Bloods. Now, listen, I lived in Crown Heights. I'm laughing because these young men came up and said, we're not here to hurt you. We want to help you. We see that you're struggling with two babies and a bunch of groceries. Can we help you? They brought all my groceries in. We introduced ourselves, and we just became neighbors. We became friends. And guess what? I got to know these boys. A lot of them turned to the Bloods for support when they didn't get it at home, when they didn't get it in their community. But I'm telling you, when you treat them like people, and you open your ears, and you open your heart, and you open your mind, I can honestly tell you the Bloods of Crown Heights are not gangsters. They might have been at one point in time, but they're not today. When it was time to send my kids to school, as everybody knows, at this point, I'm an Orthodox Jew. And we lived in Crown Heights, and my kids went to an adorable play group for about 2 years. And then when it came time to go to proper preschool, I sent my children to all my children in Crown Heights. Now, I want to make something very clear. We're not Lubavitch. We're Orthodox Jews, though. I wear jeans. I don't always cover my elbows. I am modern Orthodox. I am modern Breslov Hasidus. We are not Lubavitch. And that is the strand of Judaism that is predominant in Crown Heights. My children all my children, the Jewish school, for about 3 weeks. The blatant hate that I felt from that school in 3 weeks was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. And my nanny at the time was Black. She was still like family to us. And there was a day, this is what basically it boiled down to. They complained about everything we did. But the problem is I would go in wearing pants, and that was not okay. They complained about literally everything that we did. In 3 weeks, they complained about everything we did. The icing on the cake was there was a miscommunication between myself and my Black nanny. And I thought she was going to pick He thought I was going to pick the boys up from school. It was an honest mistake. My nanny went and got my boys, and the director of the school read her the riot act. And she said to me when she came home that night, she had never felt so disrespected in her life. She said, Yael, I know she treated me that way because I'm Black. And she said, I know she treats you this way because you're not the strand of Jew that is predominant in Crown Heights. Later that same evening, the night of the miscommunication between myself and the nanny, when my children were picked up late from school, I received a call from one of the teachers saying to me, listen, I could lose my job with what I'm about to tell you. You need to know that you are being bullied out of this school, They don't like you. They don't like that your nanny is black. She told me straight out, please get in the house. They don't like the fact that your nanny is black. And frankly, they don't like you. And as your friend and as an educator of your children, I am telling you, I would make it my priority I wouldn't send these kids back. And I didn't. So I did, living in Crown Heights, I did what no Jewish mother would usually do. I sent my kids to a public school where they received a stellar education, and they were the only white children in the class. And you know what? To this day, I stand with that choice that I made. My children do not see color. My children do not see color. They see their friends. It was the best thing this family and I could have done. My children was to send them to a public school, and they were the only white children. And guess what? They were loved. They were cared for. Our family was respected. They were treated with kindness, with community. We weren't the Jews on the block. We were one of the block. When it came to when I broke my foot, it was my black neighbors that and took my children. There were Jews on the block, but you have to understand, we weren't their kind of Jew. Yeah. So racism in the Jewish community isn't just differences of colors of skin. If you are not Lubavitch in Crown Heights, you are going to have a very hard time. Now, I've heard that it could be different now, but let's just put it like this. I am in no hurry to run back to uncrowned whites, whoops, I mean Crown Heights, to go figure out if whether or not non-Lubavitch Jews are allowed in the community. I will never put my family in a position like that again, where we saw for ourselves as a family over the course of 5 years that we lived in that apartment, we saw what it meant to be family in the black community. We saw and felt firsthand what it means to be the white people in a black neighborhood. And guess what? There will never be, I will take my memories of Crown Heights and I will hold them dear and close for the rest of my life, because we were totally embraced by the black community. We were friends with everyone on the block except for the white Jews. Isn't that interesting? The white hipsters liked us. Even the black people said, I can't believe you're Jewish. I can't believe you just don't see color. You have to put yourself in a mindset where you don't see color anymore. You see a person and you see if they're suffering, offer to help them. My experiences of living in a black neighborhood, I will cherish that the rest of my life. I will cherish those neighbors the rest of my life because I saw firsthand how the police, there was a time that we were invited to a cookout. Now, this is adorable. We keep kosher. What I thought was so sweet is they knew we couldn't eat any of the meat. So they bought a bunch of corn because my children love corn, and got a bunch of aluminum foil, went to a different grill, had me light the fire, and we were able to be a part of the cookout with kosher food and non-kosher food. We were able to sit there together and have a wonderful time. It was one of the best days of my life, where I was able to see for myself, when you show your neighborhood, when you show your neighbors humanity, and when you're really part of the neighborhood, when you're really trying to be part of the solution and not part of the problem, you're embraced like family. My time being the white people in a black community was some of the best years of my life and some of the kindest, when we were literally thrown out of a Crown Heights yeshiva because we were not the right brand of Jew. I hope that the Jewish community in Crown Heights has pulled their heads out of their asses and started to embrace diversity and starting to embrace their black neighbors. We're at the point where there is no room anymore for racism. I have seen with my eyes black people having a cookout or sitting on the porch just talking, and cops just show up to make sure everything is okay. What the hell for? Nobody called them. There was nothing going on. But when they see black people congregating, they always have to go and check in and make sure everything is okay. I've seen it for myself. I've seen it with my own eyes. Racism is real, and we have to do everything we can to combat racism. We have to do everything we can to stand with the black community. And if you don't know how to be helpful, ask someone, how can I be helpful? What can I do to be helpful in this situation? Me personally, what can I do? Believe me, they'll tell you. A lot of our black brothers and sisters are just asking for more education, for people to be aware and for people to care. And we have never seen people care more than what we've seen with the outright murder of George Floyd. I hate to say it, but I'm glad that it was recorded, and I'm glad that the video went viral, and I'm glad that the world got to see what really happens in the black community. There were 3 other officers there. Nobody stepped in and said, maybe the guy really can't breathe. He's handcuffed anyway. Put him in the cop car. This was blatant, outright murder by the police, any way you slice it. We have to stand together, pray together, and do whatever we can to bring solidarity and to bring oneness to the world. And positive energy is contagious. When you are doing something for the positive, and this is why I have a problem with the looting and the protests, the riots. That is a cultivation of negative energy and destruction. And speak positive energy, regardless of what the police are doing, we will accomplish far more with great blessing. It's important at this point to care. It's important at this point to pray. And it's important more than ever before to never be ambivalent again. We as Jewish people have to remember that we have been in the world one of the most persecuted people in the entire world. And what we're seeing happen to our black brothers and sisters happened to us in Europe. It happened to us. It has happened to us in just about any place that we've lived. We have more in common with the black community than we think. And they need our prayers. They need our solidarity. They need our brotherhood. They need our sisterhood. They need our support. And we cannot be ambivalent to their problems, because there was a time where our white European neighbors were ambivalent to us when we were ratted out, sold out, and kicked out to the Nazis. We can't allow this to continue ever again. And it's infuriating. It's enough to make you really mad. But we have to remember that anger doesn't solve anything. Anger usually creates more problems. If we had had solidarity in Europe from the white Europeans Just want to remind everybody that white Europeans, not Jewish white Europeans, like Christopher Columbus, those people who has his own holiday, these were people who built slave ships. These were the people who had the fabulous idea of the sickening idea of slavery. We can't look at them anymore. They should be rioting in Europe. They should be rioting in Europe over the death of George Floyd. They should be not rioting. They should be protesting. And they should be protesting, looking for an apology for what their ancestors could have done. It is sickening the way the hate of white Europeans has been a constant problem, whether it be a Jewish problem, whether it be a Black people problem. We have to remember that we are not, what's the word I'm looking for? We have to stand together with them more so than any other community because we have firsthand experience. Let me tell you something. A regular non-Jewish white person will likely never experience a firsthand situation with racism or bigotry. But if you ask those same people if they consider Jews regular white people, they will tell you hell no. We must stand together with the Black community. We must not be silent, and we must, very important, and one of my friends who's in Uncrowned Whites, Crown Heights, is watching right now. If you want to be the change in the world, when you take your children to the playground, for crying out loud, let your children play with the Black children. Times I took my kids to the park in Crown Heights, and you would see my kids, Muslim kids, Black kids, Spanish kids playing together, having a wonderful time, regular white kids playing with the Black kids, having a wonderful time in the sprinklers, having just a blast, and the Jewish kids sitting there playing with themselves, giving looks to the other children playing. If your children do that, you are at fault. If your children don't feel safe to go play with a bunch of little Black kids at the park, let me tell you something. You, as their parent, are the problem. We have to teach unity at a young age. When we have got all of these white children going to private schools with no exposure, I'm telling you, it does something dangerous. It creates separation and it creates divide. And I'm not saying you don't have the right to religiously educate your kids. Please don't misunderstand me. You definitely do. What I'm saying, you also have the responsibility to acclimate your children to other colors and to other cultures. So when you are a Jewish person and your little Jewish children don't want to go play with Black children at the park, you are the problem. You are part of the problem. And I have seen too many times at the parks in Uncrowned Whites, Crown Heights, Brooklyn, be the problem. I've seen these Jewish kids not want to play with the Black kids. I know they're getting that racism from home. Where else would they learn it? Well, maybe with the Crown Heights yeshiva system, maybe also in school. Something's got to give. Something's got to give. Things have to change. We cannot shelter our children from different cultures and from different minorities. We have to, and I send my children to a yeshiva now, but guess what? Every time we go to the park, we actually have Black friends. They get together, they have a blast. We don't only stick with our kind. My children know all about Christmas. They know all about other holidays. They have a lot of non-Jewish friends, and they just say it's not our holiday. When the kids are able to do that, it comes from the parents. You have to teach your children young that all lives matter. And I mean that when you teach your kids, you don't get them involved in political bullshit. Everyone matters. When your little children know that everybody matters and they can feel safe at the park and they run and play with the different kids, we're teaching our children to love each other, and we're teaching our children to see past color. A Jewish person had the gall one day to tell me that because my children go to a black school, what are you going to do if they talk black? What the F-U-C-K? If they talk black. It exists in Brooklyn. This is the shit that exists in Brooklyn. I sent my children to a black school because Crown Heights, with the exception of one yeshiva, Lamplighters, which still doesn't condone co-ed education, by the way. So if you wanted to acclimate your children to boys and girls learning in a classroom together, you don't have a school in Crown Heights to send your kids to. The rest of their god-awful yeshivas have sex abuse victims all over the place. So if you send your kids to a Crown Heights yeshiva, with the exception of Lamplighters, you are putting your children in a building where sexual abuse has occurred. I'm not putting my children in that environment. I'm not sending my children to a yeshiva where God only knows how many victims that have come forward already. Sex abuse is crawling out of the Crown Heights yeshivas, with the exception of Lamplighters. But again, if you want boys and girls to go into a classroom together, to learn together, to acclimate to each other, so that your sons and daughters know how to problem solve with the opposite sex, that's real important for life. You don't have a school in Crown Heights to send your kids to, if those are your values. We have to look internally and ask ourselves seriously, am I a part of the problem or am I a part of the solution? And if your children are not allowed to play with black children, that you are a part of the problem. And I've seen it happen all over Crown Heights. You'd have long summer days where the kids are just having a blast at the park. The Jewish kids show up, they play by themselves. They don't even approach the other children. That is teaching children racism, whether you like it or not. We have to be past fucking racism. It is so prevalent in our community. It's sickening when we have more in common with the black community than we do any other race on the planet. We have more in as the Jewish nation, we have more in common with the black community than we can even begin to imagine. I want to wish everybody a wonderful weekend and a wonderful Shabbat. And I want you to ask yourselves the next time the kids are at the playground, do my white kids play with black kids? And if not, why not? This is how we get racism before it starts. We need to do more. We need to pray together. We need to work together. We need to kill this evil off the face of the earth together, because we have to do it. We have to stand together with our black community and be one with them in their time of crisis, because we need each other and we need to stomp out racism wherever it lay. And I'm saying truly to my white girlfriends, my Jewish girlfriends, think about the next time you take your kids to the park. Do your kids play with the black kids? And if they don't, you got to ask yourself, why not? because this is the only way that we're going to stomp out generations of racism. My children have memories that they will take with them the rest of their lives. And I am very proud of my family. I'm very proud of my children that we have been able to see past color, because let me tell you something. My time in Crown Heights, where we were embraced, we had a wonderful neighborhood, and all of our neighbors were Black, and they were just wonderful people to live with, wonderful people in our community, and had nothing but warm, fond memories of them. But when I take a look at my memories of Crown Heights as a Jewish community, it makes me want to puke in the toilet. There is so much broken with that community. Your rabbi is dead. Leave it be. Grow. When your children won't play with Black children, you can't possibly say you're part of the solution. You are a part of the problem. If your little Jewish children don't want to befriend little Black children, there is a freaking problem with you and your family and your values. You cannot possibly say you stand against racism and your children don't have one Black friend. It's horse shit. I am so angry, and I am trying to harness that anger into something positive by sharing how I feel and by sharing the things that happened to us and the people that were there for us and the people who treated us like family, the people who treated us like community. They even invited us to church. And when we told them we don't go to church, they said, that's okay. We just want you to know you're welcome. I'm telling you, if you are living in Brooklyn, if you're living in Crown Heights, your Black neighbors are probably your best neighbors. And they will, if you are good to them, they will be gooder to you. I can't tell you how many times I was helped, I was supported, cared for, and nurtured by our Black neighbors. And it was our Jewish neighbors that made us feel like garbage. Like garbage. And I think that that's something that I deserve to share that story after what we went through, having to pull my children out of a yeshiva because we were being bullied out because I wear pants and don't cover my elbows. Get your shit together, Crown Heights. There's a reason I call that community uncrowned whites. Get your shit together. I've seen it on the playground. Little Jewish children refusing to play with Black children. I've seen that shit. So if your little Jewish children at the playground don't want to play with the Black children and you think you're not racist, you're wrong. We need to teach our children young that all lives matter. We need to teach our children young to not see color. And that is our choice as their parents and our responsibility as their parents. If you don't want your children to be racist, what are you doing today to ensure that your child will not become a racist? It's up to us. It's up to us to stand with them, to be beside them, and to be a community for real. We're allowed to be different. We're allowed to pray differently. We're allowed to believe different things, but we're not allowed to be ambivalent to the suffering of our Black friends and our Black community. Even if you don't have any Black friends, ask yourself why that is. I don't want to see another video by Candace Owen. I understand that George Floyd was a man that had trouble. I understand that fentanyl and methamphetamines were found in his system when he died. He was still murdered. He tested positive for COVID-19. He was still murdered. And the way that he was murdered is despicable. We have to do more. Racism at this point is not an option. And we have to teach our children at a very young age to not see color. The best way for our children to thrive is to have those relationships, is to have those personal experiences where I've had to say to my children, well, some people don't like black people. And they've looked at me and said, but why not? We're having such a good time. I know. Kids can't understand it. It's up to us to make sure that our children are not racist, that our children embrace their neighbors, that our children love their neighbors. And it's up to us to kill racism. And we got to start acclimating, getting kids together. There's got to be community understanding. There's got to be change. I'm wishing all of you, first of all, does anybody have anything they would like to say or add before I sign off? Okay. Well, wishing everybody a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Shabbat. And again, killing racism starts with each of us individually. And if you don't know how to end racism, pray about it and ask yourself a serious question. If you live in Brooklyn, when you take your kids to one of the fabulous parks, do your kids play with black kids? If the answer to that question is no, whether you're a good person, whether you're a bad person, you're part of the problem. And we need you to be part of the solution. And being part of the solution requires fundamental change in the way we think, in the way we behave, in the way that we treat each other. Wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbos and wonderful weekend. God bless you. And please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you so much for the support. Be well.